Georges Simenon was a Belgian writer who published over 400 novels in his lifetime. That by itself is impressive, but what makes it more impressive is that he didn't have that consistent of a writing habit. He certainly didn't write every day, not even close. In fact, in his words, I only write for about 60 days per year. That is to say, 5 or 6 novels. And the rest of the time, well, I don't do much of anything. Most of his time was actually spent not writing. But then occasionally, again, in his words, 5 or 6 times a year at the very most, I retire into my own shell for 8 days. And at the end of that time, a novel emerges. Now, Simenon was one of a kind, and we must be careful about modeling our work lives after outliers. However, his style of working, that of short, focused, intense sprints, followed by long periods of non-action, is something that we, as knowledge workers and creative workers, can and should benefit from. And so in this video, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about work sprints or productivity sprints, how to work like a lion, sprint, and then rest. Now, before we dive into the video really quick, I'd like to announce that we've opened up enrollment for the next work sprint cohort. So if you want to work like really hard, get a lot of work done alongside a bunch of others in a high energy community with accountability, then head down to the link below or go to worksprint.co and you can learn more. So first, let's contrast Simenon's highly prolific sprint work style with the world of productive mediocrity that many of us operate in. You've likely found yourself in the world of productive mediocrity before. I certainly have, and I find myself in it again and again, and I have to get myself out. It's where you lack focus. You work on multiple projects at once because it makes you feel busier, but you don't really push any of them forward in any meaningful way. You are consistently inconsistent. You go days or weeks procrastinating on busy work instead of pushing forward that important creative work that matters. You lack intensity. You lack momentum. You lack fire. You lack creative aggression. And at the end of the month, or worse, the end of the year, you look back at what you've done and you feel disappointed. Not just at the quantity of work you've done or the lack of it, but also the quality. And when you're stuck in this world, you view creative work as a process of simply checking in and putting in the hours. And yes, that counts. Volume matters. You have to show up. But it's also about how you work, how hard you focus, how you structure your time, how you work during those hours. And it's also about how you don't work, about how you rest. Because if you're always on, if you never take the time to engage in or disengage and do non-action, then it's quite hard to actually be creative because some of your best ideas come when you're not working. And so in the world of productive mediocrity, your creative output looks something like this. It's very low level. There's, again, not much intensity, and it's easy to procrastinate. There's no urgency, no pressure. There's a little focus. You just don't get that much done. And the quality of your work is just not that great. In Simenon's world of sprint-driven creativity, output looks something more like this. Intense, focused periods of action and creative output followed by the exact opposite. Non-action, rest, or simply just playing, doing other types of work. This is what it means to work like a lion or a mental athlete. This is not my idea. It's something that many others have talked about, including Nassim Taleb, the author of Anti-Fragile, The Black Swan, and other books. He says, I find it preferable and less painful to work intensely for very short hours than do nothing for the rest of the time, assuming doing nothing is really doing nothing, until I recover completely and look forward to a repetition, rather than being subjected to the tedium of Japanese-style low-intensity, interminable office hours with sleep deprivation. Navar Ravikant says something similar.
So as a modern knowledge worker athlete, as an intellectual athlete, you want to function like an athlete, which means you train hard, then you sprint, then you rest, then you reassess, you get your feedback loop, then you train some more, then you sprint again, then you rest, then you reassess.
Sprint, rest, sprint, and then rest. What Naval understands and what Simenon understood as well, whether he realized it or not, is that creative work benefits from both pressure and its absence. Consider your body, your physical body. If you want to build it, if you want to build muscle, then you need pressure. You need stress. You need to sprint or lift. You exert output, but you can't keep that exertion up for long until you need to rest. And if you don't rest, then you will not grow. Creative work is not the same, but it's similar. You can train, sprint, and then rest, exert pressure, and then pull back and benefit from its absence. This way you escape productive mediocrity and you get the best of both worlds. See, there are two things that are true about knowledge work and creativity. The first is that necessity is the mother of invention and that sophistication is born out of hunger. When you're under pressure, whether externally or internally imposed, great things happen. You become more creative because you're kind of forced to, right? You find solutions to problems. You exert a lot of energy. You throw everything at the wall and you take a lot of action and you tinker and you figure things out. And you do this in a way that doesn't happen when you're in that low-level state of productive mediocrity, right? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you've experienced times like that. The inverse is also true, in that the best ideas can come to you during a state of non-action. Perhaps you're going for a walk or you're lying on the beach or you're in the shower and you just have those epiphany moments. As a side note, those epiphanies, those great ideas that come to you when you're not working, they usually come to you after a period of like intense action. At least that's what I find. That's what a lot of other people find. They don't really come to you if you've been spending months like doing nothing and procrastinating and you're waiting for some divine clarity to come down. That usually doesn't happen. It's never happened to me and I wouldn't bet on it. The mediocre knowledge worker or the mediocre creator unfortunately exists in both states at the same time, right? They're not truly taking action and working with intensity, and they're never truly relaxing either. And so they don't get the benefits that come from intensity and pressure and narrowed focus, nor do they get the benefits that come from leisure and rest and non-action. They're busy, but they're not creative or productive. The mental athlete, the person who works like a lion, doesn't do this. They sprint both on the micro cycle, the daily, and the macro cycle over the course of, say, a month. And so on the daily, they might work for 3 to 4 hours, do 3 to 4 hours of deep work, intense focused work, and then go and do something else, relax, play sport, exercise, whatever. On the monthly level, they might sprint hard for 2 to 3 weeks on a specific project and then pull back a bit, maybe handle some admin work or, work shorter days or whatever. So how can you practically do this? Well, there's two things, and I just alluded to them. The first is to compress your work time during the day, compress your work days. And not everyone can do this. I know that some of you watching this, you might work, a 9 to 5 and you can't really get away with saying to your boss, hey, I watched this video from Sam Matler and he said that I need to work like a lion. And so I'm only going to come in for 3 hours every day. I'm just going to do all my work in 3 hours. Maybe you could do that. I don't know, but probably not, right? This is more for people who have control over their time, or perhaps you're working on a side project and you're finding that you kind of exist in the world of productive mediocrity where you're working a lot of hours, but you're not getting much done. You can figure out a way to apply it. I've found that I'm far more productive when I do this, when I force myself to work less hours at higher intensity. And at the end of the day, most people who think that they're working like 8 to 12 hours a day, they really aren't. Unless you're doing like meetings or calls all the time, you're probably not working that much. Maybe you're doing half that. And so it's like, why not just actually do half those hours and then enjoy the rest of your time, right? If you're only working 4 hours out of your 8-hour workday, then just work the 4 hours. Just increase the focus. Easier said than done, but logically it makes sense. And what you'll also find is that you do better work because when you compress that time, you're forced to focus. You don't have time to muck around. When you've got this arbitrary or vague deadline, let's say, you're like, oh, I might finish work at this time, then you can just put things off. You can procrastinate. You can say you'll get to it later. When you say, I'm going to finish working at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m., you better get to work, man, because you ain't got much time. The challenging thing here that I find is to actually stop working once you've hit that mark. Once you've hit the 4-hour mark or you've finished a task, you're wrapping it up, and you're like, okay, now what? It's the early afternoon. I could just keep working. I might as well, because like that's the productive thing to do. It's like, no, just stop. Like, go read a book, go do something you're curious about, go for a walk or something. Just try it out. Like, do it for a week and see what happens. I guarantee that if you're in a position where you can do this, like you're a solopreneur, you're a creator, you try it out, you do like a 4-hour workday, I guarantee you will be more productive. And you'll get to the end of those days, or you get to the end of the week, and you'll feel far more accomplished and probably far more relaxed as well. So that's the first sort of step or method, is to just compress your work days. The other way to do it, which I really like, and it's a method that I use again and again and again, and has helped me a lot, is to do a productivity sprint, which is kind of the core of this video. So this is essentially where you work really, really hard on one project for a period of like 2 to 4 weeks. I like 2 weeks. I generally do 2-week sprints. I find that to be a good timeline. And then you take like a week, not off completely. I don't take it off, but just lower intensity, kind of rejig everything, do some admin work, catch up on what you had to neglect while you were focused so hard on this one thing, and then repeat when necessary. And that's kind of the Georges Simenon way of working, apparently. Though I would really struggle to write an entire novel in 2 weeks. So what I'm going to do is actually open up something I've put together for you, which is my productivity sprint planner. You can actually download this for free in the description below. There's a bunch of stuff in here. So let me just pull it up. And what this will do is help you plan out your own sprint, your own 2-week video that I run something called Work Sprint. If you want to join a bunch of other people and you want daily accountability and you want to be in a high energy community and you want to do this alongside others, essentially, then make sure to check that out. A lot of people find it hard to commit to like a 2-week sprint and keep doing the work and not procrastinating. And so that accountability helps. Anyway, you can check that out at worksprint.co. So this is just a Notion doc that you can get access to. I've got a full 30-minute walkthrough where I go through all the principles and kind of the mentality behind it. But really quick, let's just go over this for if you want to plan your own sprint. So the first step is to get clear. Clarity matters. The more clarity you have on why you're working on what you're working on, why you're sprinting on this thing, the better. Because if you don't have some level of clarity, some level of commitment, then it's very easy to quit. It's not easy to do a work sprint. It's not easy to apply yourself with intensity and focus for even 2 weeks. A lot of things come up, like on day 1 or day 3. You start wondering, maybe this isn't the best thing to work on. Maybe I could do this instead. Maybe this isn't the right time. I'm too busy. Like, all these things start coming up. If you establish beforehand why you're doing what you're doing and why you need to commit to it, then you're far more likely to stay the course, right? You're far more likely to see it through. Now, one of the other mental reframes around this, which I may have mentioned in this sprint planner, is that you should do a sprint not just to get the work done, not just to complete the project, but to shift your behavior, to change your behavior permanently. So a lot of people struggle with procrastination, and they do a sprint like this, and after 2 weeks, they basically show themselves that they are able to execute. They're able to execute with focus and intensity and consistency, and it causes like this shift in mentality. And I know this is true because we had a bunch of people join like the early work sprint cohorts, and I caught up with a bunch of them like 6 to 12 months afterwards. And some of them said like doing that 2-week sprint changed the game for them, changed how they thought about productivity, and the effects were still lasting all that time later. So it does matter what you do, but don't overthink it, because at the end of the day, the benefits of simply applying yourself like this go far beyond just the completion of your project or the work that you're doing. There's a few points here which I go into more detail in the attached video of this document, but basically, like, don't overthink it. Look at the problems you're facing, and if you cannot figure out what to do, just commit anyway for the reasons that I just said. Arbitrary commitments are useful. People don't realize how useful they are. And you can read this article, Faith Over Logic by Eric Thornburg, for more information on that. One of my favorite essays. Write out your sprint goal. That is step one. What are you going to do? How long are you going to do it for? 2 weeks is my recommendation, but perhaps it might take a bit longer, or maybe it's just a week that you need to work on it for. And the second step is to basically plan it out. And when I mean planning, I don't mean some complex like project plan with a bunch of like deadlines and tables and all that kind of stuff. Maybe you need that if you're doing a very complex technical type of work. Most of us don't. And most of us would be engaging in procrastination if we were to plan like that. But it does help to kind of outline everything that you need to do within reason. So for example, I've put here, like one of my previous work sprint goals was to publish 4 YouTube videos. And I could have just said, okay, I'm going to publish 4 videos in 2 weeks. And that could have been my plan. But, a week into it, I might have been demotivated. And I have this obstacle of like, I need to do an entire YouTube video. Like, it's a lot of work. I don't feel like doing it. But by breaking it down into key sort of subtasks, it's a lot easier to tackle. It's a lot more motivating to do the work. This is goal setting productivity 101. So I'm not going to, talk like you don't know how to do this. But that's what I mean by planning. Just breaking it down a bit, like what are the sequences? What are the steps involved? And how can I break them down enough so that I can tackle them bit by bit without getting super specific? Like, you can't really break down brainstorming into subtasks. I mean, you could, but that would just be kind of dumb. I like to do this on pen and paper. I don't really use digital task management tools that much unless there's other people involved. I just like to use pen and paper. And then the other part of your battle plan is to just outline your own personal sprint rules. So, what are you not going to do? How long are you going to work each day? What's the minimum? What will you need to sacrifice? Because you probably will need to sacrifice something. For me, I cut back on social life a bit. I have to cut back on my physical training, not completely, because you do need to keep your energy levels up. And I kind of strategically become lazy when it comes to other work, like admin or emails or whatever. That stuff can wait, right? So outline your sprint rules. There's a couple of ideas here. And then basic strategy is worth thinking through. Like, what is the 80-20 approach to what you're doing? Okay, I have to make 4 videos in 2 weeks. Like, is it best for me to do 1 each sequentially, or should I write all 4 scripts and then record all of them on one day, and so on and so on and so forth? Just how can you approach this more strategically with more leverage or effectiveness? The third step is to execute. Like, you're starting your sprint, it's time to work. I like to take a day or 2 before my sprint just to rest and recharge and make sure that I'm ready to go. And then I've included a bunch of tactical stuff in here. I'm not going to go into that. Do the work, enjoy it, get into flow states, be consistent. You might feel like quitting. Don't, just keep moving. Because again, like if you just commit and you finish and you complete what you said you were going to do, you'll come out the other side with a lot of momentum and confidence. And your fourth step is just to do a brief review. So what went well, what could have gone better, what did I learn? And what I haven't put in here, but what you should do is just take some time off. Maybe you can't take a week off, but take like a day at least, 2 days just to do nothing, or just enjoy yourself, like engage in leisure. And that's where, going back to what we talked about at the start of the video, that's where those ideas are going to come from. You've just done this intense sprint, this intense amount of work. You've focused really hard. You've got a lot done. There's all this stuff going on in your head that you haven't been able to process yet because you've just been in action. But now that it's finished, that stuff's going to start, sorting itself out, and you might have some good ideas as a result. So that is the sprint planner. You can get that in the description below. And that is basically it for this video. So to quickly recap, we want to escape the world of productive mediocrity by working like a lion. We want to sprint with intensity and then rest and let non-action do its work. We can do this on both a micro cycle on the daily, so working for 3 to 4 hours with intensity, and then taking the rest of the day off. And we can also do it on the macro cycle. So a couple of weeks, work really hard on, say, a single project, and then step back and then repeat the process every now and again as we need. And finally, another shameless plug, Work Sprint enrollment is open for next month. If you're watching this later than August, then we'll probably have another one scheduled soon. So make sure you head to worksprint.co. There's a link down below and you can learn more about that. It'll be great to have you inside. It's a bunch of fun. But if you're not going to join, that's also fine. I would still encourage you to do your own sprint in your own time, following the sprint planner that I just showed you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.